Okay, so first of all, don't get very depressed that we have few people here in person, because yesterday I just took the data on this. For any session, we had about more than 25 people online who joined us, right? Which is, I think, quite good. And we had unique visitors that joined through the app, 77 yesterday. So I think those are, kind of, at least numbers not to feel alone. So I think so. Don't be disheartened, and I hope people will also sort of join in. It's a bit early in the morning right now. Great. Okay, so 4 points from yesterday's sessions. We had a I think very rich session, and just if you step back, yesterday was primarily to frame the conference, right? So it was, kind of primarily we talked about some framing presentations and also some foundational concepts such as digital literacy, such as birth registration, which is the gateway to all the services that we're interested in terms of from a digitalization agenda. Birth registration becomes absolutely important. The way we think about digital literacy is also critical. So these are formative concepts, and we had some framework discussion, starting from the kind of the introductory session to the presentation from Mushtaq Bhai and Sajjad Bhai. Both were about framing. So 4 points that I think sort of important to highlight. So first, I think, and I'm not going session by session generally, but sort of overall, if I step back. So one is, I think, the importance of power, politics, and capabilities, right? I think, and that is really critical because, this is a conference organized by BIGD. We're a social science research organization, and we care about, and we want to see the world, and we think the world is richer, and the solutions are more effective if we look at solutions through a lens of power, politics, and capabilities. And if Mushtaq Bhai was here, he would have hugged me because this is something that he keeps on talking about. So I think it's extremely important that, for digitalization agenda, we take the ideas and interplay of power, politics, and capabilities extremely seriously. Within that, I think there are, few ideas that basically, I think 3 points that emerged quite strongly is primarily from Stefan's presentation, keynote presentation. So one is the importance of bureaucratic politics, right? The second is economic incumbency or economic interest. And thirdly, elite commitment. And these 3 together, understanding the dynamics of these 3, the bureaucratic politics, the economic interest and incumbency, and elite commitment, the interplay of these will create the possibilities of what type of a developmental bargain that one could actually think about here. And it is, so the key question is, does digitalization offer a new space for a developmental bargain? And I think here I'm borrowing from, obviously, Stefan Durkon's new book, The Development Bargain, right? So in the context of Bangladesh in particular, is this a space that opens up opportunities for renewal of the development bargain that got us here to help us to get us where we want to get to? And this would be a topic of another conversation which we will have, and some of you may be joining that. Stefan will be giving a talk on that sort of later. It's not part of this conference, it's a separate event. Okay, so the second point, and very related to the first point, is information power, right? How do we think about information and power? What is the relationship between information and power, and how does digitalization operate within that relationship? And I think one way to think about is actually digitalization is more about solving information asymmetry problem, and whether its impact on the power asymmetry will depend on many other situations, particularly what is the governance arrangement within which the information asymmetry is being solved. And I think that's a very useful framework for us to think about how do we approach the strategy of digitalization with a developmental agenda, right? So there are certain types of digitalization that may actually not be developmental, and certain other types of digitalization which actually may have developmental outcomes. So being able to identify and have a more nuanced approach to the digitalization agenda, I think, is very important. And I think we had some really great discussions on that. And hopefully we will keep that in mind as we move to today's agenda. The third point for me is really around the non-linearity of relationship between digital access, digital skills or literacy, and digital usage, right? The relationship between these three are actually mediated by lots of other factors. And I think as social scientists, we really need to unpack this. We really need to, before we get to digital literacy, we need to really unpack these social relationship that mediate ultimately digital access and usage, which is what we're ultimately interested in. So I think that is also extremely important and exciting as social scientists. Finally, the gateway service of birth registration. I think what stuck to me is the fact that there's a lot more happening than perhaps what we hear in the public discourse. There's a lot more that is happening within the government system that we need to take account of, and we need to see how we can contribute to. But I think most importantly, if we keep the citizen at the center and build system to serve the needs of the citizen being at the center, I think it becomes much easier to be able to develop systems. And the citizen at the center is not only about a rhetoric of citizen at the center. It is the citizen with its complexity of condition and context within which the citizen is located, right? And the citizen's reality, the real world within which the citizen actually is located, needs to be really understood extremely carefully to be able to design systems. So it's not about a rhetoric of citizen at the center. It is really a intellectual challenge of really understanding what does it mean for this agenda to have the citizen at the center. And I think that is a very exciting knowledge agenda. Okay, day 2, it's a very busy day. I've already eaten up some time. Apologies for that. But it is a very full day, and we need a lot of energy from everyone. We start off, with. I mean, I won't go session by session, but we start off actually with a session where we look at the outcome actually. So yesterday we've been talking about the kind of foundational concepts. We've been talking about frameworks. Today we almost jump to, okay, what is the outcome that we want to basically achieve through the digitalization? So one part of today is thinking about the outcome. So one outcome is women's empowerment and social transformation. And we start off today with the outcome in mind, okay? So that's the first session. And then we move to a session which we had to accommodate primarily because of other logistic reason, but it's a very important session where we talk about methods, right? So we talk about outcome and we talk about method, and we talk about what type of new opportunities and challenges does existing research method face as we're dealing with this new research space. So we will be talking about natural language processing and new research method in the sort of second session. And then the rest of the day, we actually move to more interventions, right? So if you just follow the thing, we start with outcome, we look at a particular, we focus on methods and outcome, and then we look at certain interventions, digital services, right? And there we're looking at platform services. We'll be looking at social protection services. We're looking and we'll be looking at health services in particular. And that would be the run of the show for today. So welcome everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rich set of conversations that we'll have and presentations we'll have today. Thank you very much.
With that, we're going to be beginning session 5, titled Digitalization, Women Empowerment, and Social Transformation. The session is chaired by Dr. Sajida Amin of the Population Council, who's joining us virtually. Our first presentation is from MD Raed Arman of BIGD. That's followed by Lupita Hook and Pragna Mapara, both of BIGD. Thereafter, our last presentation is from Professor Nova Ahmed, joining us virtually from North-South University. If I could ask all of the participants to come up to the stage, and a reminder that please speak into the microphone when presenting.
All right, are we ready to begin? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. From a very dark, but the end of a lovely weekend. I'm very pleased because I had the day to go over yesterday's sessions on Facebook. I'm very pleased to say that I have been able to participate more than I had expected to. My takeaway from the sessions I was able to witness is perhaps a little bit different from Dr. Mateen's. So just in very small sound bites, what I heard is different people talking about the whole digital technology process using different terms, digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. And today, all three, I think, will talk more about the transformation process, the outcomes, than the first two. One observation I have from yesterday's presentations is that the more we get into the process of digitalization, the more dismal we seem to become, and we remember that inequalities exist, technologies are not neutral, and we're more dismal about the potential of technology. I'm hoping that the focus in today's session on outcomes, not so much on the process, and on pre-existing conditions and how to address them, will take us to a maybe slightly different, more optimistic position. So without much more to say, I'm going to start the session by inviting Mohammad Raed Arman, who is a research associate at BIGD, to make his presentation. As I've indicated to the presenters, I'm going to, each of you have 15 minutes. I'm going to give you a signal of some sort, I'm not quite sure how, at 12 minutes, maybe just speaking out. And I hope that will allow you to wrap up your presentation in the 3 minutes after. Mohammad Raed Arman is going to talk about online freelancing and women's empowerment. And I think we're going to hear about a randomized controlled trial in Bangladesh that they are involved in. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sajadapa. So welcome everyone. Today I'm here to talk about this study that I was involved in, which was also co-authored by my colleagues, Dr. Narayan Das, Dr. Sakib Mahmood, and Ms. Mohima Gomes. So, sorry, yeah. So starting off, can we go to the next slide? Do we have a slide switcher? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Starting off, we need to know why is this research important and what purpose does it serve in terms of value addition to the knowledge base. And this brings us to the phenomenon of a gender gap that exists in the Bangladeshi labor market. The gender gap definitely has two angles to it. One is the employment gap and the other is the wage gap. And as can be seen from the references cited here, in both cases, the female participants in Bangladesh are lagging quite far behind than their main counterparts. So this is a problem that needs a solution. And in this age of fourth industrial revolution, a potential solution has arrived in the form of online freelancing. Online freelancing is essentially freelancing work, which means you offer a service in exchange for payment, but do not remain employed under a particular employer long-term per se. The only difference is, as the name suggests it's online. The services include anything and everything, but the more common types are digital marketing, graphics design, web development, and so on. So I just labeled online freelancing. The slide shifter is not working, I think. Oh, thank you. So I just labeled online freelancing as a potential solution that must have been based on something, right? So this comes from the fact that Bangladesh has the second largest share of global supply of registered online freelancers. However, the participation for women is relatively low. In fact, if you can see from this, thank you. So if you can see from this citation, so women comprise only 9% of all the registered freelancers in Bangladesh. So what is happening here? Is there a skills gap? Is it a skills gap problem? Will participation and other labor market outcomes increase if we introduce some sort of intervention that tries to mitigate this skills gap through training or something? These are questions that naturally arise, and there's a dearth in experimental evidence in the existing literature here. So this is where this research comes in and tries to add value to the knowledge base. So in this study, we use RCD to evaluate the impact of an ICT-based training, which was followed up by a post-training mentorship. The target group was women aged between 18 to 35 years with a minimum degree of SSC. And the training was provided in Dhaka city. There was a 4-month-long classroom training, which was followed by a 2-month mentorship or hand-holding, whichever you may call it. In this slide, we look at the methodology or the sample, the randomization process is visualized. So after passing the eligibility criteria, the sample of 900 people were drawn and they were randomly divided into treatment and control groups. The treatment group were provided with the training and the control group did not receive anything. So the randomization was done in a phased manner since it was not operationally possible to train such a large number of people simultaneously. The treatment group participated. So it happened intake by intake and it went on for a while. In each intake, the applicants had to pass a written test, a computer literacy test, and an interview. The ones who passed the test were randomly divided into 2 groups in each intake, and this continued for a while, which is exactly why the baseline survey took just over a year to complete. The follow-up survey took only 1 month, and it was completed during November to December 2021. So based on the follow-up data, we found the treatment and control groups to be balanced, which we'll see later in the slides. So we used only the follow-up data, and these are the regression equations, the estimated equations that we'll be using. We use both ITT or intention to treat analysis and also treatment on the treated analysis to see the impacts. For the ITT regressions, sorry, I got distracted. So, so for the ITT regression, this coefficient beta here will be our coefficient of interest. For the TOT regressions, sigma here in equation 3 will give us the impact estimates. So for these estimators that I just spoke about, for these estimators to be unbiased, we need the treatment and control groups to be homogeneous. And so we did test for that. And as we can see from here, there's no significant difference across the treatment and control groups. So we can say that there's no heterogeneity heterogeneity across the treatment and control groups. Another important test that we have to do before going on into the analysis is checking for attrition. So here we tested with 3 different specifications, and we can see that the existence of no significant difference we see that the attrition is random, and there's no systematic bias involved in the attrition. Moving on to the findings, before we get into the impact estimates, I think it's important that we do some descriptive analysis. So we were talking about labor market outcomes and the gender gap. So this horizontal bar chart here talks about the employment status of the treatment and control groups. The one in the bottom here shows the employment, the share of people employed or unemployed in the treatment group. And the blue sections here show the percentage of people surveyed in our sample who were unemployed. And as we can see, there's a big difference between the treatment and control. So this means employment has increased for, or employment is higher rather for treatment group. And as expected, the middle bar, the green or the lemon yellow section here basically shows us the percent of people who are employed in freelancing. And we can see that expectedly the share of people who are involved in freelancing is much higher for the treatment group compared to the control. An interesting thing to look at here is the share of non-freelancing activity. The share of people who are involved in non-freelancing activity has decreased or is lower for the treatment group compared to the control group. And for now, let's just hold on to this thought. This definitely looks like there's some substitution phenomenon going on here. We'll get to see where, in which field actually this substitution is happening later on. So looking into average monthly earnings and hours worked per day, we find it higher for the treatment group in both the indicators, even for non-freelancing activities. This indicates towards a possible spillover effect, but is it significant statistically is something we need to be sure about, which we'll see when we do the impact analysis here. But yeah, this is something to keep in mind. We at least have some weak evidence of some spillover effect happening here. So moving on to the impact estimates. This slide here shows us the aggregate. This means we have not divided the income generating activities into freelancing and non-freelancing per se. So we can see in aggregate terms, the share of people who are employed the people, the working hours per day and monthly earnings of the respondents have increased, and the magnitude is around 50% for income and hours work per day, while the magnitude for share employed is around 28%, which is relatively high. We broke it down and segregated into freelancing and non-freelancing activities. And as expected, we see very high magnitude impacts of very high magnitude for freelancing activities. Moving on to non-freelancing, we see the employment is significantly lower, which we could also see in the horizontal bar chart that I discussed about earlier. The hours work per day is not significant. It has positive coefficients, but it's not significant. Monthly earnings is when in the ITT coefficient is significant at 10%. So there's some weak evidence that even in non-freelancing activities, there are some positive outcomes, and this can be due to the fact that sorry, once again I got distracted. Okay, so this can be attributed to the fact that the people who took the training actually had some impact on their aspiration as per their career goals and objectives. The training might have increased their confidence and the overall drive to work harder and to earn more. The training might have had some spillover effects. Maybe something else was taught to them which they're finding it beneficial to use in a different field of work. It might be that. We'll get to that once we look at the breakdown. So here we have the employment and income indicators across the different IGS. So remember the substitution between freelancing and non-freelancing we were talking about earlier. This slide here shows us that participation in private tuition for the treatment participants is significantly lower, as can be seen from here, the TOT estimates. Private tuition being a volatile occupation, perhaps more volatile than freelancing. In tandem with the comparative status of private tuition in the society may have contributed to the phenomenon. We observe a positive impact on business here, weak evidence. Online business is very common nowadays, and the nature and content of the training enhancing the digital literacy and ability of the treatment participants may have played a role in the positive impact on business here. So with higher income, we expect a better situation in the financial market. And here we find that even though the share of people who have savings and active loans are significantly higher and lower respectively for the treatment group, there's no impact on amounts. There might be, however, these are not very long-term information here. So in the long term, we might have some impact on the amounts as well. We also expected some impact on empowerment, but did not find any positive impact. However, interestingly, if you can see here, we find negative impact on permission to commute alone or to start a new income generating activity. But this is most likely an exposure-driven outcome rather than anything else. We also looked into aspiration and confidence. As I said earlier, aspiration and confidence, however, we have not found, however, we haven't found much in terms of aspiration and confidence. Also, we looked into lifestyle indicators and we have not found any impact on these indicators as well. Software and internet usage, the frequency and pattern of usage has definitely changed. The purpose of internet usage is higher for IGS and is lower for communication for the treatment group as compared to their control group counterparts. I'm running out of time here, so I'll just move quickly to the conclusion. So in this study, we have found that freelancing has some positive impact on female beneficiaries in terms of labor market outcomes, and evidences show that in the socioeconomic condition of South Asia, it is more convenient for females, given that online freelancing is convenient for females, given that they get to work from home, which allows them to partake in regular household and care work. Therefore, this sector has the potential to contribute to reducing the gender gap in Bangladesh, and interventions such as this one on a large scale at a national level might be the way forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you especially for keeping to time. There is at least one question in the Q&A that I hope you will get to. And I'd like to add to that question, perhaps in your responses, you give us a little bit more detail on what the interventions are to help us understand better why you have these effects. So the next presenter, going on to a paper by Lopita Haq and Program Mahpara. I hope I'm not butchering the name. And they are going to talk about virtually excluded. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the title of the presentation here. So over to you, Lopita and Mahpara. You also have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Sajida Pak. Good morning, everyone, and greetings. It is a pleasure to be a part of this wonderful panel here today. The research that we will be presenting on today is titled Virtually Left Out, Recognizing and Realizing Transformative Potential of Adolescents in Bangladesh. Both of us, me and my co-author, Lopita Haq, both of us will be presenting today. So to start off, our research objective was to understand how gender and digital divide shape up adolescents' potential and helps them to develop their capabilities in developing their voice and agency. And to do that, our research question was simply to understand what are the implications of access and ownership of mobile phones and internet for adolescent girls' voice and agency. And voice and agency here means the ability of adolescents to meaningfully participate in household, school, and community life, which are key to them in developing their skills that are required for political participation in adulthood. So this is the outline of our presentation, but we are tight on time, so I wouldn't go through it. And we will directly go through some striking quotes from our respondents. I hope you all can read these. These are quotes from adolescent boys and girls, all in class 8, 14 years old. And these are on their, how they imagine a world with digitization and their digital world. And they look at these as, you know, as these digital world has broad spectrums of possibilities. They very much imagine themselves to be a part of this digital world, and they're very positive about digitization. And however, they're also aware that different people will use digitalization differently. This is what digitization looked like in Bangladesh back when we did the research, which is in 2019. As you can see, there has been extraordinary strides in the number of mobile phone subscribers as well as internet users. But what I want to draw attention is to the unequal access of ICT because of the urban and rural gap as well as the gender gap in internet use. But please note that these statistics are prior to the COVID pandemic. This research that we are presenting today is from the broad research that we did from a larger research conducted by BIGD under the Gender and Adolescents Global Evidence Research Program. So for our research sample, what we did is we selected 4 different schools for 4 proxy income groups, as proxies for income groups. We selected an English medium school, which was a proxy for high income group, a Bangla medium school, which acted as a proxy for middle income group. We selected a school from Kumilla in the rural area as a proxy for rural middle income group as well as lower middle income group, lower income group, because some students from low economic backgrounds also went there. And then we selected another Bangla medium school near a low income settlement in Dhaka, which acted as a proxy for low income group. We talked to adolescents, and these were adolescents from class 8, both boys and girls, age 14 years old. 14 years is a transitioning period for them when they're turning from a young adolescent to older adolescents. At first, we had FGDs with them, with the boys and girls separately, and then we selected 4 boys and 4 girls from each of the schools to have in-depth interviews with. And then we also had focus group discussions with their parents and teachers, all class 8. We've already mentioned a lot about our methodology in the previous slide, but then for the timeline of the research, we conducted this from July 2019 to February 2020. These are the number of interviews that we did. But once we were done with analyzing the data, we went back to the schools to validate our research findings. So what did we do for analysis? At first, we wanted to establish the gender divide in terms of the access and ownership of internet and mobile phones by comparing the adolescent boys and the girls. And the second tier of analysis was to rather zoom into the differences in access and ownership between different groups of girls and how they use it to build their voice and agency capabilities. And for voice and agency, these are the indicators that we looked at, whether they were being able to access information, whether they were learning new skills, contributing to household decision makings, whether they were able to recognize and mitigate online risks, develop interpersonal relationships, or whether they were being able to connect to larger virtual communities and movements, all through the help of the internet. So we would now move on to the findings. And our findings showed that there is the gender gap in digital access, but it is different for higher socioeconomic group in comparison to the middle and lower socioeconomic group. If we look at access to devices, we see that there is no gender divide actually in the English medium school who were a proxy for a higher income group, because most of the boys and girls that we talked to, almost all of them actually, had access to different digital devices such as phones, laptops, iPads, tablets, etc. On the other hand, if you look at the middle and lower socioeconomic group, some of the adolescents, very few actually, had their own devices, and they mostly relied on shared devices, mainly from their family members, siblings, etc. However, we see that even within the middle and lower socioeconomic group, it was the adolescent boys who were spending much time with the internet and mobile phones, and they even had the freedom to go with their phones outside their houses, as opposed to the girls who were rather restricted because of their, their mobility is highly curtailed, their internet use is highly monitored. And oftentimes we saw that adolescent girls had to snatch bits of times in order to, use their mobile phones from their parents when they were back from work. So the boys had a better quality of access of time, and they could decide what to do within that time period with their phones. Similarly, when it comes to access to the internet, we saw there was no gender divide in the higher socioeconomic group. All the adolescents had Wi-Fi's in their homes or wherever they were going. But in terms of the middle and lower socioeconomic group, well, they did not have access to Wi-Fi. They were rather buying mobile data packages. And it was mostly the adolescent boys who were going outside the house, buying data packages through their savings, or availing Wi-Fi in public spaces. So therefore, we can say, and we found that it was actually all the girls, except who are from the higher socioeconomic background, have less access compared to the boys. And even within those girls, it is the rural girls who had the least amount of access. And we will hear about this in the later part of the presentation. And these two quotes clearly summarize the challenges of access as girls face when trying to use the mobile phone and internet. And it shows that having a phone or not, there is parental control when they're using ICT, and which may or not may always be justified, and does not always lead to a healthy relationship with the digital device. I'd now hand over to Lopitapa to take over.
Hi. So I'm taking over from Progga. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to go deeper into the divide amongst the girls. So this slide shows the differences in the ownership and access to devices and the internet between adolescent girls. And what is important to note here is that girls from the higher socioeconomic group or the English medium school all own their own smartphones compared to half of the girls from the Bengali medium school or the middle income group, representing the middle income group, and compared to none of the adolescent girls from the lower socioeconomic group in the urban area or the rural school. So what this means is that girls from the English medium school have far greater access and freer access to the digital world compared to the other girls from other socioeconomic groups who, as Progga said, snatch 10, 15 minutes of time on their phone and usually use it more to play games or to get onto social media. So what are the implications for voice and agency according to the indicators that we have set here? So first, if you look at accessing information, while Google is everyone's favorite search engine for any information that they want to seek, adolescent girls in the English medium school were found to be far more adept at seeking out and using information. Their skills of using the information was much higher. But another major difference between the different groups of girls was in the use of educational apps. So we found that adolescent girls from the English medium school use a number of educational apps to help with their research, to help with their lessons. And they talked about how the school teachers actually point them in the direction of good research sites, how to do research, and encourage them to use in the internet. But adolescent girls from the urban lower socioeconomic group know of a few apps, but they hardly get to use it. What they do use, however, is YouTube in order to do their get lessons and tutorials. But it is the
Are we disconnected?
Yeah, the room's lost power, I think, or connection. I'm just going to keep tab on how much time they're losing.
Yeah. Probably physically it's going on, so.
Hmm. I've messaged them. I'm not sure what else we can do. Maybe you want to message as well so that they know that we've both lost power. I don't know why my message is not going.
Yeah, I heard back from Sumala and she said they're having some connectivity issues and they will get back. Yeah, I think they're
Okay.
back.
Now my messages are not going either.
Did she say anything?
Okay.
And that would allow them to keep themselves safe. But in the schools that we visited, especially in the rural area and even in the urban areas, we found that the government has ensured that every school has a computer lab, but we found that in most cases, the computers were not operational, or the school didn't have internet, or the teachers didn't allow the children to use internet, or the teachers themselves didn't know how to use it properly. And of course, there was also some kind of preference for boys. I mean, we found teachers who would say that, girls really can't handle technology. So when a number of students are sharing a computer, the boys would always get preference to use those computers. So here in this quote, we hear what we heard throughout our research is the interest and the willingness and the interest of young girls to learn much more through the internet, but not being able to do so because of the constraints to access. And it shows that a lot of this willingness actually transforms into lost potential in our analysis. So finally, so what are we saying? We're saying that there's a greater opportunities for adolescent girls from the higher socioeconomic groups for transformative change, and they can equip themselves better to achieve the aspirations that they have for themselves. But all adolescent girls have the interest and the willingness, but they do not have the opportunities. And least of all, we found that the opportunities are most constrained for girls from the rural school and from the middle income group in Dhaka city. I would just like to refer back to what Imran Bhai was saying, and actually Professor Mushtaq Khan was saying about power, politics, and capabilities, and reflect on our findings in the sense that the politics of who gets a voice is very clear in this, and who is powerful is very, very clear in this analysis. Whose capabilities are getting the kind of encouragement and getting the kind of infrastructure and support is very evident. And this, the digital access can be actually used to reduce these inequities, but we see that, in fact, here they are actually exacerbating so that some girls are virtually left out. Thank you.
Thank you. I got that nice takeaway. We lost a little bit of connectivity for a bit, but thank you for that excellent presentation. Again, please put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll invite the next speaker who's online as well, Nova Ahmed, who will talk about designing socially acceptable interventions. Nova, over to you.
Thank you very much. I will try to share my screen, and if it doesn't work out, I will ask you to help me out with that, the organizers. Let me try out. The host is not allowing me, probably. Okay, oh, it's already there. So yeah. Can you see the screen or? Um, is the screen visible to you? Sorry for the.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm Nova Ahmed. I'm the odd one out here probably because I'm not a social scientist. I'm a computer scientist. I'm from the other side. And while as a computer scientist, I wanted to see why we don't have enough women. And I work towards inclusive technology, making technology more accessible and looking for reasons. So it very much aligns with the first speaker's talk and the second speaker's talk. And having two teenage girls, I can see how this access relates to the problems. So, so first I would like to talk about the project. We worked on a project called Alur Akash, a lighted sky in Bangla. The name was given by my mom. And it's a project funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. If you please go to the next slide, probably. Yes, thank you very much. So the next slide, please. So we did this project throughout the pandemic situation. If we go to the next slide, then I have a little bit more on the, yes, thank you so much. So we did this project when, during the time the pandemic was going on. So what we did was we conducted the research all across Bangladesh in all 8 divisions, but we took smaller breaks whenever that situation was better. Time to time, we traveled to different locations for some research group discussions. We had online discussions, so it was a mixture of some online and offline discussion. And we met 208 participants. All women. We had some men, but in this presentation, we will talk about what we found with women. And the period was from February 2021 to January 22. So you can see in between we had these lockdown periods. And what we wanted to see was the same question, why women are not using technology, but this time we actually focused more on financial technology or fintech, because when it comes to technology, we see in South Asian region, women are much behind. Also, when it comes to finances, again, we see that barrier. So when both of them comes, we wanted to see how it's going on. And it was not planned that we will do the study during this pandemic, but it happened to be at that time. And interestingly, pandemic played a role in technology usage. So that's what we wanted to share also. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a little bit about the participant groups. So if you look at, I don't know if it's very much visible, but for the first box, if you look at the right-hand side, you will see all were adults when we talk to the participants, but it was more of a younger group compared to the older group. So more young adults compared to other age group participants. From education level, it's interesting to see that there are a significant number of participants who were illiterate, and again, a significant number of participants who were actually finished undergraduate degrees. In between, there were some others. And from the income level, it was largely low and lower middle income groups. We did it based on the Pew Research classification. Okay, if you move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a picture of entrepreneur group who are indigenous entrepreneurs from Cox's Bazar. The photo is taken with their permission. They were very proud to share their information. So as we did the study during this pandemic situation, it was clear that most of the participants faced a severe economic difficulty, directly or indirectly. Some of them could share it explicitly, some had implicitly, but it was a difficult situation because when we did the research, there were previous lockdown situations and it affected all type of participants. But few things emerged, and my presentation is more focusing on the positive side, although there were negative aspects, which I will share in the next slide. But few things emerged very nicely. First, we found out that the financial technology, although it's all type of technology, but through our participants, majority talked about mobile financial services, the type of services we can access through mobile phones, but there are other internet services that some urban participants shared about. But one major advantage was being able to actually continue the financial operations. So throughout the lockdown and after the lockdown, many were actually glad to continue to conduct the financial operations. So there were many stories around it. For example, the garments workers were very glad to be able to receive their salaries. There were some participants like the drivers who did not have any vehicles to drive during lockdown. So they were in the village, but they received their monthly salaries. Some said receiving about, partial salaries, some shared about receiving full salaries. So there were some of the businesswomen, very low income businesswomen like vegetable sellers or those type of very low income who actually continue their businesses through their daily profit. So it's a daily basis a business. So they also shared that they're glad to be able to just continue to get some support. There was one story I wanted to share. It was from a transgender participant. So she identified herself as a woman, and she shared how difficult it was because they had no earning at all. And one of her niece called her up and said, I have nothing to eat and I could not eat anything yesterday. And the participant shared how she was able to send the money immediately hearing that. Just to be able to share that money seamlessly was a great advantage. Apart from that, as we found out from the previous presentations, the online education was another thing. So in our participant group, because we were talking to all adults, we had many teachers. So school teacher, college teachers, and university teachers as well. And in all the teachers group, we found out that the teachers were engaged in these online platforms. Although some of the teachers had to actually work innovatively because of the digital disconnectivity, some of them talked about their learning curve, how they had to go through learning new technology, but that was another technology connectivity. So many of them would not be able to learn these new technologies, but this pandemic situation actually kind of enabled this opportunity. The last one was very interesting. Like there were innovative business solutions. We talked in the first slide, there were evidences that there are many freelancers and online connectivities are increasing throughout this pandemic, and there were special attention paid to that as well. We found out that there were many online businesses. Apart from that, there were innovative online businesses. For example, there was one entrepreneur. She was actually a physiotherapist, and she has her own physiotherapy center where she actually continues with her trainings and exercises. But during this pandemic, the people who receive physiotherapy are mostly stroke patients, and they are actually considered vulnerable. And during this pandemic, they actually remained home because of their physical vulnerability and mobility issues. And what this physiotherapist started was an online physiotherapy session. And initially she thought there would be resistance, there wouldn't be enough participants, but slowly it caught up, and she was very happy with it. And so was her patients, according to her sharing. And also I want to share about the picture on top. It was from Cox's Bazar indigenous community. So here we had some entrepreneurs. They are all school graduates, so they finished their grade 10 level studies. And these entrepreneurs, one of them shared how she actually makes dresses, and how she learns new dress designs from YouTube, and actually designs her own dresses so that she gets better customers. And she actually started this through this pandemic period, because there were people more online and she had a better connectivity. She had time to do these things. And also she said she learned financial technology better through this time. And with her with her shop, she also had a small center to that's an MFS agent shop. So this was nice to see all these innovative technology access. And I mean, because what we learned from working with ICT for over this last few years was, whenever there are opportunities to contribute, when it adds value to you, there will be actually ways to learn it. When there are, I mean, as we saw in the adolescents girls group previously, when you know that you can learn a new experiment from YouTube, probably you will learn how to use YouTube better. You will explore it on yourself. So when it adds positive value, definitely, it actually, there are new doors that can be opened. So if you go to the next slide, there were some few challenges shared by the participants. So, so there were several challenges. So the first challenge we faced was about the concern about the trustworthiness of technology itself. And also another difficulty was about how to learn about technology. Who will teach me? I suddenly need to use technology. And if I have a child at home who is tech savvy, that's good. But if there is no one, if there's no one who has that time to spend on me, the women, especially the elderly women, suffer a lot. So the younger generation kind of were better exposed to technology because of the socio-cultural issues and access, but learning was another problem. And the major problem we faced, because as I showed in the data, that there was an illiterate group, major illiterate group among the participants. So the literacy actually plays an important role. And the illiterate and economically lowest groups actually suffered from the digital divide. For these participants, they were entirely disconnected from this digital revolution, that everybody is getting access, learning, exploring technology a little bit, but these groups actually remained untouched. And the impact was larger than we can imagine. It's not like I cannot do a business, I cannot send money. It's beyond that, because information was majorly disseminated, especially the advancement of what's happening through the COVID situation, that was very fast disseminated through technology-based platforms. So these groups remain unattached to that. Apart from that, most of the government and non-governmental support was disseminated through digital technology. It was mostly through mobile financial services. So they were, if you don't have a phone, you are not even listed in that recipients list. So that was another major disconnectivity. So if we go to the last slide, so what can we do about it? So we cannot right away, if you go to the last slide, please. So that's where we need to think about how we can make technology inclusive. So when we have this major community who is digitally disconnected, or who is not even literate, how can we engage this community? So I was thinking, as I visited villages, urban areas, semi-urban areas, and the farther I go from the city, I see people are more collectivistic, more working as a community. In city area, the poor people struggle because I don't have anything to cook. I don't have money in my home. But in rural areas, it never happened, because if somebody else knows about your problems, they will actually reach out and extend the help. So I was thinking, if we actually go back to that collectivistic support system for the disconnected community in terms of technology usage, maybe collectively, the youth can be engaged the same way we have done a revolution in vaccination and other problems. If we can solve our own problem of digital disconnectivity, I think we have a lot to do, and maybe we can learn from our pandemic and make it better for before the next disaster arrives. Thank you very much. If you go to the next slide, I will just introduce my team here. So yes, this is the research team, and the coated people are the administration from our university, and on the bottom and side, some of our researchers are here. Thank you very much. And at the last slide, I have acknowledged the funding resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much, especially for being dot on time. So I have the difficult task now of trying to articulate some takeaways from these three excellent presentations. And I think we are back to kind of the initial statement that we started with, is technology is not neutral to power and politics and inequality. And that is something that we have now found in three different ways in these three different presentations. That is not reassuring, but it's not surprising either. The question is there a way of dealing with it front and center in the spirit that Nova has suggested, in terms of what can technology do once it recognizes these initial conditions. One common theme that I see in all three presentations, I mean, perhaps in a way that was that needs to be understood better, is in Rad's work. He did a lot of there was an exclusion criteria for less educated people. So in some sense, he's not being able to capture these people that are more excluded in Nova's study and in Lopita and Mapara's study. So I think we need to understand that a little bit further, and perhaps maybe ask for more explicit inclusion of less educated people, and ask for sort of other aspects of the interventions themselves, once you get into them, that would perhaps address that. But I think taken together, it resonates sort of the importance of recognizing realities and inequalities and pre-existing conditions, and the idea that the introduction of a new technology potentially may exacerbate existing inequalities, and we need to address that. But my own sense of it is that that itself is not surprising. That is why you need to put that front and center in the development agenda, and not expect technology to solve all kinds of problems in the same way. So let me see if there are questions in the audience. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to field questions, perhaps with raised hands from the virtual participants, and with a microphone in the physical space. And looking for some guidance here from the organizers.
Can I come in?
Yes, please, Imran.
Okay. Thank you. I thought it was a very interesting set of presentations. I was just, this finding that the online freelancing impact evaluation came up with, which is, I found it to be very interesting. It wasn't, I think, highlighted as much, but I think is important, which is the fact that income and productivity is going up. Of course, substitution or not, that's a different question, but overall, the program is, the intervention is extremely successful in terms of income and productivity. However, we see, the fact that it has a regressive impact in terms of women being, kind of reporting more barriers in terms of their mobility. Now, I think that needs a much deeper exploration, because now all types of income earning opportunities do have this particular normative challenge because of patriarchy. Is it any different for digitalization, digitalized opportunities? And this is really important if you think about, if you want to really promote digital economic inclusion for women. And I think that gendered reading of this digital economic opportunity is extremely important. And I think that's where the quantitative and the qualitative needs to really, really come together and sing together. And I missed that part. It wasn't really mentioned. I think that's really, really important. Just want to highlight that. Thank you.
Sajadapa, if I may, I'll like to come in later and respond to Imran Bhai's observation. Yeah.
Sure. We don't have a whole lot of time. If the organizers would let me know when I need to stop, but if I don't see any raised hands, there is a.
I guess, I'm sorry, I'm another colleague from JPG. I'm also part of BRAC. So yeah, working on Aspiration, there are some questions that was rounding on my head. So I guess you all have seen like Mina cartoon in your like adolescence period, right? So like comparing to the fact like about the mobile phone usage and the boys and girls disparity. So did COVID make any kind of rise on accessibility on the fact that in rural areas, I have seen some examples, like some adolescent girls were like selling some products over online of their like mothers or their sisters or father's products. So is it a rise that they have the compatibility to use for the COVID? And also one thing I want to add with Mr. Mateen, that like in labor market, we can see the discrimination between men and women for their wages, right? So my question to Raya, that did you find any kind of difference in the digital platform, I mean the freelance market, that the girls are being prioritized or the men are being prioritized for their wages, or just because the quality of their work, they used to like get the prices as they were secured? So that was the two questions from my side. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit lost here. Are there any other questions in the room?
No.
Okay, there is a question in the chat from Dina Tasneem. I think it was to Raed. Why didn't you compare male and female within treatment and control? Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, I'd like to give the presenters an opportunity to respond in the order that they presented. So Raed first.
Thank you, Sajadappa. So I think I'll address your comment first. So you said there was an exclusion criteria of minimum education level of SSC, why people with lower literacy levels were not included. And I think the implementing organization win with that, there are two reasons for that. One is because it was a pilot, a very initial level intervention. They're just which they plan on scaling up. So they just went a bit safe. And also the main reason is that it's the nature of the work that they will be involved in, which needs at least a minimum level of understanding and cognitive ability. When you're doing web research support, when you're working as a web research support assistant, or when you're doing digital marketing, or when you're doing graphics design, you need some level of literacy or education. And not to forget, you also need to advertise yourself in the freelancing marketplaces and get hired into gigs, which need a certain level of communicative skills. And for that, a minimum of SSC was selected. And I think for this type of intervention, it should be segregated depending on what element or what skills, or on which sector the skills is focused on. Say for graphics design or web research support or digital marketing, I think and minimum of SSC is good enough. However, there are some online freelancing services that require much less literacy, and for that we can lower the bar, and that is something we can definitely look into for further research. To address Dina Tasnimapa's question, which is I think also related to the other question that I faced from there, the JPG guy. So yeah, sorry, I didn't get your name. So the fact that we did not look into males versus females in our research is because the research only consisted of female participants. The intervention was aimed at women aged 18 to 35 with a minimum of SSC. And so to address your question, we also the fact or just observing if men are being prioritized in the marketplace or in the training, we could not look into that because that was not covered in the scope of our research because the sample only consisted of females. As for Imran Bhai's comment, yeah, that's a very, very good point that I just skimmed over. Yeah, I should have focused on that more. But yeah, so I think an exposure to, I think it's more of a general issue in the socio-economic context of Bangladesh, the exposure to actually women who were treated, who actually had to go out and take part in the training programs and attend classes, faced because they had to go out more than the people who did not go out and attend classes, they faced the barriers that are out there, and that's why they reported we find some negative impacts there. And yeah, this is something we really need to look into. So thank you everyone for all your comments. Lopitapa might also want to add something to that. Oh, just to, sorry, am I taking too long? Just 30 more seconds. So this research is actually that I presented is actually a part of a bigger project, which had a qualitative element, and none other than the person sitting left of me, Lopitapa, led the qualitative part. However, for this conference, we just focused on the quantitative findings and the quantitative part. Thank you. So yeah, over to you, Lopitapa.
Just very briefly, from the qualitative research that we did, we found that actually, women who were coming to the training wanted to do something that was based at home. So they were very keen on doing an income generating work where they wouldn't have to go out. So that might be part of the, reason why you're seeing a drop in their mobility. But another reason is because women who did do freelancing used their extra time, their leisure time to do the freelancing. So it wasn't like in a career or in a profession where you have a chunk of time that you dedicate to work during the day. So what they did was do all the work, do all the housework, do all the care work, everything. And then whatever time that they had left, they would spend on freelancing. So there's that element as well. So it's not, I mean, that surely has an implication in terms of their empowerment, because it is, it doesn't do away with any other work or any other, responsibilities that they have in their household. It is additional to what they already do. Thanks.
Thanks, Lopita. And I think we're almost at time. So Nova, some quick responses to some of these questions.
Yeah, thank you. Because I did a qualitative study, and I mean, during this pandemic, I can relate to some of the comments about the mobility comment and about the access comment. And I found similar concerns too. There was one thing that we found throughout the study was women's acceptable work. One of it was teaching, like teaching is a safe work for women, and also the freelancing or working over the internet appeared as, I mean, safe work because women do not have to go out. So I'm not talking about the training part. I'm talking about the conducting the job or doing the business online. So it was like referred to as a good job for women because they can take care of their household and, I mean, work at their leisure time. And also we found out that as they're doing these type of works, these women are also referring to it as they have to finish all their work and then they can do it, and they're facing lots of barriers from their household. So there were some unmarried businesswomen. They said they were working online, but their mother will call them and come and ghar jharu dao, clean up the room first. You are just sitting in front of the computer. You are not doing any real work. So it also had the social implication. It's not like you could do it. It had to, you don't have that fixed amount of time that's dedicated. It's actually fragmented time. And about the adolescent research, I would like to add a comment there. I did some small scale exploration and I worked with English medium and Bengali medium students in urban area. And as you said, there is a big divide because the English medium students are getting access. Some of the barriers were implicit. So the girls from English medium or Bengali medium in urban area, they're from high income groups, their parents would take away the phone when they're going to sleep, but the boys would get to take the phone with them. So it's not actually yes or black and white. Even when it looks like you have access, you have your own device, there are very implicit, I mean, very tiny bit of division. So I will ask you to explore more because it's a large scale study and probably we need to talk more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I was actually going to make a similar suggestion that I think one of the gloom and doom recommendations of enduring inequality or exacerbating freedoms, a lot of it comes from the design of your study, which is about contrasting extremes. But what about within an urban area? Where are these differences being exaggerated? And why not begin with recognizing that inequalities exist and patriarchy exists, and there are time use allocations that persist, that are very gendered, and design your interventions or design your questions accordingly. I would go to the RCT walas and say, how about designing interventions that are time savers? How about interventions that somehow help with better cleaning, better jharu, and better cooking, for instance? Why only think about the work sector, the economic sector, in terms of productivity in certain ways when you know the reality is that a big part of the gender divide has to do with the inequalities in domestic work sharing. But on the whole, I think this is a lot of food for thought, and I really look forward to what happens next in these studies. And more power to all of you for taking on this important work. So we shall call it a close here. Thank you.
Thank you, Saradapa.
Thank you very much.
With that, we're going to take a break for tea until 10:40 and return here.